Ever crack open a research article and feel like you need a dictionary just to get started?
Happens to the best of us.
Today we're tackling two terms that trip up even seasoned researchers: moderators and mediators.
Yes, the classic confusion.
But don't worry, this deep dive is going to be your secret decoder ring. We're digging into a 1986 article that's like the ultimate guide to understanding these concepts and why they matter.
And it's not just about academic jargon. This is about understanding cause and effect, which is pretty important for, well, everything.
Exactly. It's not just about knowing things are related, but how and for whom, which is where moderators and mediators come in.
And what I love about this article is that it breaks down these complex statistical analyses into ideas anyone can understand, like using those path diagrams to visualize how everything connects.
Like a roadmap for your research. I like that. But before we hit the road, let's start with the why. Why should we even care about the difference between moderators and mediators?
Because mixing them up can lead to some seriously wonky conclusions. Like, imagine you read a study about this new teaching method that's supposed to improve test scores.
Okay, sounds promising so far.
But here's the catch. What if that method only works for beginners?
So it's not as universally effective as they're making it seem.
Exactly. That's where moderator comes in. It tells us the when or for whom an effect holds true. In this case, prior knowledge is the moderator. It changes the relationship.
So it's like saying, hold on, this new method works, but only under these specific conditions. Gotcha.
Exactly. Now let's flip the script. Same study, but this time we find that the new method doesn't directly improve test scores. It actually boosts student motivation, which then leads to better performance. That, my friend, is a mediator, the how or why.
Okay, so it's like the missing link in the chain. It's not just A to B. There's this whole process happening in the middle. And if researchers get moderators and mediators mixed up,
Well, they risk misinterpreting their findings, designing interventions that miss the mark,
eh,
or completely overlooking crucial insights.
and nobody wants that. So let's break these down one by one. You described moderators earlier as a volume knob. What did you mean by that?
Well, think of it this way. A moderator affects the strength of the relationship between two things. The article gives us a great example about how our sense of control, like feeling like we have a choice, can moderate the effects of noise on our work.
So it's not just about how loud it is, it's about how trapped you feel by that noise.
Precisely. If you feel like you have some control, even a noisy environment might not bother you as much.
Right.
But if you feel powerless to escape it, the same noise level can be incredibly distracting.
So it's all about perception and context. That changes everything. Suddenly those work from anywhere articles make so much more sense. It's not just about finding a quiet spot. It's about designing an environment where you feel in control. That's the real productivity hack.
Exactly. And that's a perfect illustration of a moderator in action, highlighting those conditional elements that can make or break an effect. Another great example they give is the concept of social loafing.
Ah, yes, the old someone else will do it phenomenon. I know it well.
Right. But what's interesting is they explain that identifiability, basically, whether you feel like your individual effort is being watched or evaluated, can actually moderate this social loafing effect.
Interesting. So if you feel anonymous, you're more likely to slack off, but if you're front and center, accountability kicks in. Makes you think twice about those group projects, huh?
Exactly. And that's the power of understanding moderators. They help us tailor our strategies based on the specific context.
Okay, so moderators are all about the when or for whom, but what about mediators? They're the how, the bridge between cause and effect.
Right. A mediator explains the process by which one variable influences another. It's like a relay race. The baton gets passed from runner to runner. The mediator is that middle runner carrying the message forward.
I like that analogy. It really makes you realize it's not just a straight line from cause to effect. There's a whole process happening in between.
Absolutely. And to be sure that this middle step is truly a mediator, you have to show that the independent variable affects the mediator affects the dependent variable, and that this whole relationship weakens when you account for the mediator.
So you have to connect the dots between the cause, the mediator, and the effect, like building a case. And the article provides some compelling examples to illustrate this, right? Like that one about crowded rooms.
That's a good one. They talk about how perceived control can actually mediate the relationship between being in a high-density environment, like a packed concert, for instance, and feeling negative emotions.
Okay, so it's not just about being packed in like sardines, it's how that lack of space makes you feel.
Right. Exactly. If you're in a crowded elevator, but you know you can get off at the next floor, you might not feel as stressed compared to being packed into a concert where you're stuck for hours.
It's all about having an escape route, or at least thinking you do. And that feeling of control, or lack thereof, is the mediator. That's fascinating.
Right. And that's just one example. The article also talks about something we can probably all relate to, the attitude-behavior gap. You know, when we say
Yeah.
we'll do something, but then,
Life happens and we do the complete opposite. Oh, tell me about it. And in this case, the article says that behavioral intention is that mediator.
right. Behavioral intention, it's that crucial step between our attitude, what we think or believe, and our actual behavior. Like, it's the difference between saying you'll do something and actually planning out the how and when you'll make it happen.
So, okay, you could have a really positive attitude towards, I don't know, eating healthy.
Yeah.
But then if your behavioral intention is low, if you haven't actually thought about what you'll eat, how you'll make it, when you'll even buy the groceries, you're probably just going to order takeout again.
It's so easy to fall into those traps.
Ugh, it's painfully true. This is making me realize just how much our actions are influenced by stuff we're not even aware of.
It's true, and it's why understanding these concepts, moderators and mediators, is so important. It's about thinking critically, questioning those assumptions, digging deeper into how things actually work.
So we're not just editing our next research paper, we're basically leveling up our decision-making skills across the board.
Exactly. Whether you're trying to change someone's mind, streamline a process at work, or even just understand your own behavior, being able to pinpoint those potential moderators and mediators, it can be a game changer.
It's like having X-ray vision into human behavior, which is kind of amazing.
I like that.
But the article doesn't stop at just defining these terms. It also highlights what happens if you mix them up, right? The
Yeah.
strategic implications of that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. One of the biggest risks is that you end up wasting resources and coming to misleading conclusions.
Can you give me an example of that? I'm having trouble picturing it.
Okay, sure. Imagine a company that's trying to boost productivity, and they decide to give everybody noise-canceling headphones.
Okay.
But what they don't realize is that it's not actually the noise itself. It's a perceived lack of control over their workload. That's the real issue.
Oh, interesting.
They've basically mistaken a moderator for a mediator.
So they might see a little improvement because of the headphones,
Maybe.
but they're not actually addressing that root cause, that feeling of being overwhelmed.
Exactly. And that's just one scenario. Misunderstanding these distinctions can lead to solutions that just don't work in education, healthcare, even marketing, you name it.
So knowing the difference helps us ask better questions and ultimately come up with strategies that actually work. It's about targeting the right thing for change.
Yes, precisely. If you read about a study that says this type of therapy reduces anxiety, right? You could then ask, well, for whom does this work best? Are there certain personality traits or lifestyle factors that might moderate its effectiveness?
Or is the therapy directly reducing the anxiety, or is it improving sleep quality, which then has a positive impact on anxiety levels? Like, is there a mediator in the mix we're missing?
You got it. By asking those questions, thinking critically about these variables, you can really get a deeper understanding of the research and whether or not it's relevant to you.
It's like that saying, the devil is in the details.
Right.
Or in this case, the insight is in the mediators and moderators. But hold on, because it gets even more interesting. The article also mentions situations where something can be both a moderator and a mediator,
It can.
which just seems wild to me.
It is. It's really interesting. And that really speaks to just how dynamic these relationships can be. They use control in the context of stress research to illustrate this point.
Okay, I'm hooked. How can something be both? That just seems counterintuitive.
So let's say we have a study, and the study is looking at work demands, those are our stressors, and employee burnout. That's going to be our outcome.
Okay.
Now, control can actually be both a moderator and a mediator here. First, it can be a moderator. Let's say you got high control over your workload, your schedule, all of that. Those demands, they might not lead to burnout.
Oh,
But if you have low control, those same demands could become overwhelming, and that's when they contribute to burnout.
so in that case, the level of control is influencing the strength of the relationship between those demands and the burnout.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got it. But here's where that mediation piece comes in. Control can also be a mediator in this exact same scenario. High job demands They might actually lead to feeling a low sense of control, which then leads to burnout.
So it's like it's part of the causal chain. It's not just influencing the relationship. Yeah.
Exactly.
My brain is officially blown. How do you even begin to figure that out?
Well, it definitely adds a layer of complexity, but the authors of this article, they do a great job of providing a framework for working through it.
Okay, good.
They even suggest specific statistical analyses to use.
So they don't just leave us hanging, they give us the tools we need to actually use this stuff.
Exactly.
That's what I call a valuable deep dive.
That's what we aim for.
But before we get ahead of ourselves,
hmm
okay, we've been on quite a journey, but what are the key takeaways our listeners should walk away with?
Well, we learned that moderators and mediators aren't just abstract research terms. They're everywhere. They're at play in our workplaces, our relationships, even in our own heads.
They're the hidden forces shaping our world, which is both fascinating and a little intimidating when you think about it.
It is. But the good news is that by understanding these concepts, we become more critical thinkers, better decision makers, and savvier consumers of information. We're not just passively accepting what we read or hear. We're asking how and for whom to uncover those deeper layers of insight.
It's like that moment when someone explains a magic trick and suddenly it's not so magical anymore, but you understand the mechanics behind the illusion.
That's a great analogy. It's about pulling back the curtain and seeing the world with a more critical and nuanced perspective.
So, the next time you encounter a research finding, a persuasive argument, or even just a piece of advice, put on your moderator-mediator glasses and ask yourself,
What are the potential moderators at play here? Are there any factors that might strengthen or weaken this effect? And what about the mediators? What's the underlying mechanism driving this relationship?
because when we ask those questions, we move beyond surface-level understanding and unlock a whole new level of insight. We start seeing connections we might have otherwise missed, and we're less likely to be swayed by misleading claims.
Exactly. We become more discerning consumers of information, and that's a powerful skill to have in today's world.
It really is. Well, I have to say, this deep dive has been a real eye-opener. I know I'm going to be looking at research and the world around me in a whole new light. Thanks for guiding us through this. It's been an absolute pleasure picking your brain.
The pleasure was all mine. I always enjoy diving into these topics and exploring the nuances of human behavior. And remember, the learning doesn't stop here. Keep asking those critical questions and seeking out new insights. There's always more to discover.
Couldn't agree more. And on that note, we'll leave you with something to ponder. Think about a decision you're facing right now, big or small. Now ask yourself, are there any hidden moderators or mediators influencing your choice? By uncovering those hidden factors, you might just gain the clarity and confidence to make the best decision possible. Until next time.